Yeah, so thanks for wanting to do that. Do you mind if I say a prayer?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. All right. Father God, thank you for this day. Thank you for right now. This time that we get to share with each other, and where we get to hear from Greg, a big part of his life. I just ask that you would be with Greg as he shares. Be with everyone else in this room as we listen. And I guess we just ask that your Spirit would be working to encourage us and enable that gift of relationship and story and sharing to be present here for us. Give Greg strength and words and blessing. We just thank you so much for it. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
So where do we start, right?
So, yeah.
I guess just wanted to take advantage of this, opportunity for Fireside Chat. It's always been something that has intrigued me about this place, that it's intentional sharing, and it was actually kind of difficult. My first year, I was on Thursday cleaning shift, just like last semester I was on Thursday cleaning shift, so I wasn't able to make it to a lot of the ones that I wanted to. So this is good. I'm really glad that I'm on Tuesday lunch, so I can share it. But yeah, I guess we'll just start with I'm the youngest of 5, and from Ontario, farm. Just actually moved last couple of weeks. We moved into town, but I was there my whole life, I guess, on the same farm. So that was difficult, but yeah, it was just like a really simple life until things got a little. I don't know. It's difficult to kind of break into this.
Well, maybe I can help. When we were talking, you mentioned there's one like big moment that essentially has shaped the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And so maybe you can tell us how old you were and what happened.
Okay, so on my 13th, it was my 13th birthday. My mom, it was the only time where it was all my family together, because they were all off at university and doing different things, and they all come together for birthdays. That was really important for us. So it was during that time that my mom sat us all down, and she said that she had found a lump under her arm. So she didn't know what it was, and she didn't know if it was, but she knew that she found it. So she was going to go do some tests, and this kind of started this whole. I think it was just under a year, I guess, of tests and uncertainties and all sorts of things that were happening at that time. And then over the course of the tests and things that were happening, we found out that she had cancer, breast cancer, and that it was progressing. They were taking action and doing things and doing the mammograms and everything, and then we slowly found out that it had spread to her arm, which was in her bone, which was more serious, obviously. And yeah, it was just, I guess the things that shaped my life in that moment, in those times, was my little faith that I had, just growing up in a Catholic household and stuff, was growing, but also through the witness of my mom, through the sickness. She would pray with me. I was the youngest, so I was always at home. All the other kids, except my older brother, weren't at home anymore. They were off at school. So it was during those times where she would pray novenas, which are like longer prayers, 9 days usually, to a specific saint, praying for them to pray on our behalf, for for her sickness and for our family. So Saint Thérèse was actually a really big one that she would pray to often. So, and she would always say, like, offer up, like, I'm offering up my pain and my suffering and what's going on in my life, and you should do the same thing. And I just kind of really took that and ran with it. So every time, like, stuff was going on in my life, I would always offer it for my mom, like, all the time, just doing that constantly for months and months. And then, I guess as things kept going, it was March break, and I remember my mom, she was leaving to go she's going to London to get, that's Ontario, yeah. Going to London with my Oma, to buy a dress for my Oma's 85th birthday. And on the way there, she was coming up a hill, and a guy in a moving truck rolled a stop sign, so he didn't stop, and she didn't see him, and there was a car accident. So my Oma died at the scene, and my mom was airlifted to Victoria Hospital in London, which would be it would be 2 weeks that she was in intensive care. She was unconscious, and my family, like, I just remember I was home by myself, and it was such a surreal experience to, I was by myself, you know, it was a March break, playing video games and having fun and stuff, and then a police officer shows up at your door, and you have no idea why, and looking for your dad, who's in town doing farm stuff, and welcomed the police officer to my house. It was very scary, I guess, for me. And then they brought us all to my Opa's house in town and told us the news, and we went in to see her. And I guess that it was at that time that it slowly became more and more real, I guess, what had happened to my mom. In the hospital, like, those 2 weeks I remember all of it, all of those 2 weeks. The smell of hand sanitizer, the smell of the hospital, what everything looked like, the intensive care unit, where she was, all of it I remember. And I just remember going there with my family, and over those 2 weeks, they did tests, and we found out that her cancer had progressed even further. So it was spreading to her whole body. It was stage 4. It was the most aggressive that it could be. And from the accident, there was no broken bones or anything, but the head trauma was so severe that they didn't know what they could do for her. So they brought us all into a room, my aunts and my uncles and all my siblings, and it was there that they told us that she wasn't going to wake up, and it was the only thing that was keeping her alive was the life support, and yeah, that was, I just remember feeling numb at the time. I wasn't crying really at all. Everyone else was, but I was just, because for me she was bulletproof, you know, like, at the time when you're that young, and yeah, like, I was always expecting her to make it out. Sandy, who was a nursing student at the time, my older sister, she read the charts. She knew what was happening before I did. I had no idea, but I just said that I had to go to the bathroom, so I left the room, walked down the hallway in the washroom, and found a handicapped bathroom, so I could just be by myself for a minute, just to kind of process things. And I remember it was all white, like bathrooms are in hospitals for some reason. I don't know why they choose white, but they just choose white. And I just remember sloping down, like, just sitting in the corner in this bathroom, and taking off the crucifix that I had around my neck that my mom gave me, and looking at it in my hand, and seeing the crucifix for what it was. It was death. It was and I thought to myself, I remember thinking, if this is all there is, if pain, suffering, death was all there was, then I didn't want to live in the world anymore. If that's all there was to it. And I realized something that changed my life forever, that Mom believed something different. She believed that there was something after. And leading up into that point, like when she was sick, you could tell that something changed. Like I talked to my aunts after, and they said that they knew something had changed in her, that from talking to her, that she knew that that this cancer she wasn't going to survive. Somehow, she knew. And her life changed because of it. And I experienced that firsthand. And it was her witness to her faith in the resurrection, that there was something after, that she passed on to me. And so that day, in the washroom, in Victoria Hospital, I chose, and I asked God that I wouldn't be alone. But that I wouldn't have to face it alone. And I made that choice in the hospital to whatever happened. Didn't matter. And then it was after that she was taken off life support. And she was moved into a private room, and each of the aunts and uncles and the siblings and everybody, they had time with her alone. And it was 12 hours that she stayed alive off the life support. And I just remember being, like it was my family was there. And just, I remember holding her hand and feeling her, the pulse of her wrist on mine. And I remember like how fast it was beating and how much she was trying to be alive, like the body and her mind and her heart. And then I felt the pulse just stop. And it was crazy because I felt it stop before the heart monitor. Before the heart monitor stopped. And then I don't remember anything after that. I don't remember much about the funeral. I don't remember much about anything after that. But after, in those times when I felt most alone or abandoned, I knew that I wasn't. And it was a choice that I made that day. A choice to believe that there was more to life. There was something after that changed my life. And there's something that happens when you've experienced something like that. That I realize that it's something that happens to a lot of people who've gone through this kind of thing. That it increases your capacity. I learned this in, I guess, to put words to it, in Peter's Reflections on Suffering with Gerald Sitzer, A Grace Disguised, which is a great book, by the way. That the more that you experience something like that, the more your heart and your soul have the capacity to receive. And you have a choice to make still, even in that, because it increases your capacity for bitterness, anger, depression, all of these things, which are difficult. But in that choice that you make, you also have the incredible capacity to love, to experience joy and happiness. But I guess it took me a long time to experience any sort of, healing in my life. I guess for about 5 years, while I was going through high school and all of these things after the accident, I just didn't know how to deal with what was going on. I didn't know how to process things. So I ran and I escaped, which meant that, I just, at that time in my life, I didn't know how to face it. But then, by chance, and it's crazy how God works, by all accounts, I shouldn't have gone to St. Thérèse and I shouldn't have come here because I wouldn't have never heard about it if I hadn't gone to St. Thérèse. It was actually kind of a crazy story. Elizabeth von Teichmann, whom some of you know, was an alumni from here, and my sister, they knew each other from a conference, and Sandy, who was a nurse, and she likes to donate money, donated some money to Elizabeth, who was at St. Thérèse. And Sandy knew nothing of this school out west. She just knew Elizabeth wanted to support her, and Elizabeth called back. And I just happened to be in the room when Sandy played the message on the message machine when she was home one day. And she's like, "Thank you so much. I left this beautiful message," and said something about St. Thérèse. And Sandy and I were like, "Well, why don't we just check it out?" I was looking for something after my high school to do. And we looked it up, and I called Jim, Steven's dad, and I also called the recruiter who was there at St. Thérèse, and after about an hour and a half, I was sold. I wanted to go. So I packed up my car that September and drove out, and it was there that I was able to...
Sorry, I just want, what sold you? Like, what, because you got this contrast of high school being really, really tough, really, hard and bleak, and what was it that you cued in on that was like, oh, maybe this is, that made you so confident that that's what you wanted to do?
Well, it was far away, which was one of the things that I was looking at. I don't mind, it was something that everybody knew me, kind of. It's weird when you're home. Everybody knows you, and you don't necessarily have a choice sometimes about who you want to be, I guess. They all kind of, if that makes sense, it was just a really good experience for me to go away and come home and to have that. I'm not saying everybody needs that, but I think it was really, really good for me to do. So that was one thing. And also just, there was a big emphasis on formation, which was something I was looking at. And healing, they said that right in the talk. They were like, then it's really intentional about healing and stuff. So I was like, okay, I haven't really experienced anything like that before, and I know there are things wrong with me. I knew that. I was just looking in, and that was the hard part. It's like, I think a lot of times we know things are kind of broken, but we have no idea how to fix them. We have no idea how to even start, and that's where I was at. I had no idea how to even to walk through that grief and that suffering. And I was so scared that I just kind of, when it happened, I tried to just sever the connections between my head and my heart. I tried to just think it away, rationalize what had happened. That, Mom was really sick, wouldn't have wanted to see her really suffering, so this car accident happened and God saved us from a lot of grief, which might have actually been true, but it's very little consolation for a grieving heart. It's nothing, it still leaves the question, why did this happen? Why does suffering happen? Then why did this happen to us? So, I went to St. Thérèse and continued to run, continued to have masks. And act. I was really good at acting, improv. And I used that all the time, even in high school. Put on the face of the guy who's got it together and the guy who's everybody's friend. Put lots of noise out there, lots of loud energy, and nobody really sees what goes on. And it worked for me in high school. I could go and I was on for a couple hours, and then I would go home and I'd be sad, and then I would play video games, and I would just totally shut my brain off to anything, and I would just rinse and repeat every day. And then on the weekend, I'd see my friends who I actually really cared about, and they were awesome. I was so glad that I was able to find them. So I lived for the weekends, but then at St. Thérèse, you're with people 24 hours, like all the time, and that's a lot of acting. And I burnt out after the first month. It's a lot of masks to keep up all the time. It's just so hard. And then slowly my first year, I realized that I could start showing more of myself, and I could start being who I wanted to be, being who I was, and even if I had a bad day, they still loved me for it. And then halfway through my first year, they're like, we're going to start up a second year program at St. Thérèse. So I was like, sweet, I get to do that more. So then I came back, but it was about 3/4 of the way through my first year, and there was this little Filipino nun who was from St. Thérèse. She's actually from the Sisters of St. Thérèse in the Philippines, and she Google searched St. Thérèse school, and we popped up. And then she called us up and was like, I want to come visit. And then she stayed for like 3 years. So
middle of nowhere, Saskatchewan.
Middle of nowhere, Saskatchewan, where it's cold as like the bottom layer of like Dante's Inferno. Like it's really cold. And she comes from like the Philippines. Oh man, it's crazy. But she was there and she talked about the cold a lot. But what she was able to do is she had some training in healing. She had a master's in psychology and stuff. And it's okay.
Check yourself.
And
that's never happened before.
At least it's a nice ringtone. But what she was able to do is she was able to take a lot of the things that I was going through, a lot of the painful memories and things that had gone on, and walk into them with me, like accompany me to them. And you know, she's like 5 feet tall, like not even 5 feet. She would wear like these funny shoes that would make her taller. Anyway, and I would try so hard sometimes to like think about it, and I was like, my eyebrows would furrow, and she would literally walk up to me in the session, and she would like separate my eyebrows. Like she's like, you can't think your way through this. You can't think about it. You can't think it away. You have to like go into it with your heart. And it was slowly that I started to face it and connect my head and my heart again, and it was painful. But and then my second year, deeper healing. And then Greg and Peter and Bob came for a visit at St. Thérèse, and God was showing me that He wanted me to come here, so I came, and I've been here for the past couple of years, and it's been really beautiful to see that that community like is where I come most alive, and I love being in community, and I don't feel like it's like some days I have to throw up masks, but I not have to. I catch myself doing it, and I don't want to do that, and I have to slowly let go of that as well. And what I've learned is that you need to put a time, like the grief still happens and the grief still comes over me, but you can't run from it, you can't escape it, you can't fight it, you can't just not think about it. What has to happen, like what I've found most useful for me is that when I feel it happening, you identify it, and then you sit, and you just give yourself the time. Just say, okay, I'm designating this block of time to just, whatever happens, just get some tissues, and you just get some, a journal, and you just sit, and sometimes you just cry it out. Like I've done that before, many times. And you just let it wash over you, and it's that that notion that let the pain do its work, I guess, to continue to deepen. If you view it as a good thing, like let the grief be able to, the pain of, like it deepens in your soul. And that's a really painful thing. But it also allows for a bigger capacity to experience the love and the joy that God wants for you. Because in those times that I felt alone, I knew, like a really helpful image was that, you know, Christ's suffering was the biggest show of his love for us. And he invites us to that, but he also invites us to the resurrection. And for me, I felt so far away from him in my suffering, and I couldn't figure out why. But then I realized that, you know, the cross has two sides, and the other side is blank. The other side is for you. So in those times where you are farthest, you feel furthest away and you're in the most pain, he's right there on the other side of that cross. But sometimes we stay on the cross, but that's not what he's calling us to. He's calling us to the resurrection. But my resurrection took more than 3 days. It took like 5 years. But, you know, I feel like it's actually at that point where you start to come out of the tomb a little bit, and God has started to heal a lot more in my heart, and I can actually then start to not feel so much like a seed underground, but start to grow a little bit above the ground, and just start to feel the warmth, start to enjoy the good things in life and the happiness. Because for a long time it's mingled, you know, when you're still right in the heart of it, of the healing, like the pain is mingled with the joy. And that never really goes away when you're here on earth. But it slowly becomes more joy and less pain, I guess. Yeah, I think that's not the whole story, but that's a lot of it. What do you think?
Yeah. If you're up for it, if anyone has questions, you can.
Yeah, sure. Questions? Yes.
So you said that your main reaction was like escapism.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, and that, you know, I'm just wondering if at any point you did have any anger or even rage or deep depression, and if so, when in the journey?
Mm-hmm. Okay, there was not really deep depression. It was mostly anger.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I chose to express it. Anger, and just I'm realizing now that, you know, there's this thing, and it was really helpful for me to learn about this early. It's called the prayer of agony, and it's where you give everything to God, and that can come in whatever it is, like swearing, just yelling, and you just get it out. It's like the image that I like to see is that it's like a child on his, you know, father's chest, and he's just little meaty 3-year-old hands, you know, just like hitting really hard as he can, giving everything, but it doesn't hurt the father at all. He's just holding the child and letting him get it out, because sometimes you need to let that anger get out before you can actually rest. And that it also came mostly in tears as well. I cried a lot. Like it would build, and then you cry it all out. That happened a lot in adoration, and just in prayer and stuff like that, just at conferences and stuff. But I guess in the journey, the anger, it's still difficult for me. I'm realizing this, that I find it easy to trust God with my own life a lot of the time. Just like, do whatever you want with me. But it's way harder for me to trust God now with the people that I love. That's really hard. Because, like, even though I know that that things happen, and I know not why sometimes, but I trust God, it's still really hard to trust after that too. And I think he understands it as well. But there was anger throughout at points, and just frustration. And why was never, it's not, I don't think we ever really promised a why answer going through it. And I guess that's okay too. I'm sure I'll ask him when we get there. And he'll tell me. Any other questions? Yes.
This is like 100% a subject change. But the tree wedgie thing has been all over the school. Is that a real story, or was that just a funny thing?
That's a
Okay,
story.
can
I'll tell
you
it.
tell it?
Yeah. We'll tell it at the end. If there's any other questions. No questions? Okay, we're starting to run out of time. Yep. Okay, so there's two stories that you, and these are two among many that have happened at SSU and before. So this was when I was, I don't know, like 6. I loved to climb trees. I love to do anything that involves activity mostly and outside. So I was at this church, one that I don't usually go to. I remember exactly where it was. I could probably actually walk there. But James, my best friend, and a bunch of other people were playing soccer, and it was after Mass. And I was climbing, I was like, I don't really want to play soccer, so I'll climb a tree. And I started climbing, this pine tree, which I still don't like climbing pine trees to this day. They get your hands all gummy and stuff. But anyway, I was climbing, reaching up, and then I get to a branch, and it's very sparse at the bottom. Like you have to like get up pretty high. And I was climbing along, and I grabbed a branch, and rule 1 of tree climbing is you always check your branches before you move up. Did not do that. I was still very young, and I broke, and I fell. And it was easily, okay, I was only 6, but it felt like 6 feet. Like I was really high up. I was pretty high, and I was in a free fall. Like I was totally falling. And it wasn't like my underwear band, it was like the leg, this kind of a band, like that goes around the leg. And I was falling, and as I was falling, I think I might have turned in the air somehow, and it caught me. I don't know how it like grabbed, but it was on like one of those sparse branches. It was only about this big, and it caught me, and I'm just hanging, literally hanging above. I could see the ground. I knew that if I shimmied off, I would just hurt myself real bad. So I called out to James. So all the people playing soccer didn't notice me fall out of this tree, but I'm like, James! He turns and he just like falls over laughing. Because he sees his best friend hanging out of a tree. It's like, it was super humbling. Because he had to come over and like lift me up to like dislodge the underwear so that I could like. So it really wasn't a tree wedgie, not necessarily, but it was just kind of. But it was something else. He got me out, and he told that story at his wedding. He's probably going to tell it at my wedding. And every chance that he gets when I'm around, he does it all the time. So that was one of the stories. And the other one was Josh and I were on the 3rd floor, and we were having a big, Nerf guns were like a big thing in my first year, and they're still a big thing. That's still one of my loves. So, but yeah, it was me and Josh versus like 4 other people, and I had we called it the riot shield, but it was the recycling can lid from the 3rd floor, and it has a cutout. So I had my Nerf gun like this, and Josh was behind me, and we were just like taking on the world. It was great. And then I'm like, okay, Josh, we're gonna push forward, and then he like turns around and just starts shooting me. So why ruin a good thing? But anyway, he started like running away after I was like shooting him. And as he was running away, I was like, hey Josh, Captain America, because I was out of bullets. And I threw the garbage can lid. And right as I said, hey Josh, he started to turn. So when I said like Captain America, the thing was in the air. And he turns, just hits him right in the bridge of the nose. I wasn't aiming for his face, but it was like, I don't think I could replicate that shot. It was one of my best.
Did you feel like Captain America?
I kind of felt like Captain America for after, but like I felt really bad because I hit Josh in the face with the garbage can. We had only just met. This was like first month in. Oh man, that was.
It was completely unprovoked.
That's weird. Yeah.
You don't betray me in Nerf. Neil also threw a gourd at me during one of it was around Halloween. We were having Nerf gun battles and there was gourds and stuff around. Like gourds. Small pumpkins. And I rolled it and hit her in the leg, and she like grabbed it.
It probably didn't hit you. I'm a terrible shot.
Okay, I threw a shoe at Christian during our battle too. That was right after she fell down the stairs.
You're really making yourself look good.
Yeah, I didn't intend to hit him in the face either. But there was like shoes at the top of the stairs, and I just like threw it over my shoulder. Wasn't even looking, and it just like perfectly hit him in the face. So it gets intense. Like I also remember Spartan kicking Christian in the chest, and like in PH3. It was awesome. Yes, yeah.
There's also a time when you shot me in the face with a tennis ball.
Yes, you did. So I brought a tennis ball launcher as well to school for Nerf gun. It was one of those ones. It was like the K9 cannons, and James and I also get into shenanigans. We took out the regular stock band, like the regular band that it came with, because it's not nearly powerful enough. We went out and got an exercise band, like one of the thick ones, and we rewired, like we re-put the elastic in it, so it was really hard to. And then Dale, Alex, a whole bunch of people ambushed me and didn't even give me a gun. Not even classy. So I ran up to my room, got my backpack and my cargo shorts on, filled up. I actually had a whole bunch of tennis balls that I brought with me, like tennis balls, like 10 of them, and just a whole bunch of them. I filled up all my pockets and just started going. Just started like going around and shooting tennis balls, and it was awesome. So good. Such a good time. It was like 6 against 1.
Yeah.
I noticed a pattern. There's not a lot of remorse about your child.
Not really. I mean, if they start it, I don't mind finishing it if it's something that's bigger.
I don't mind if you